with insights and analysis of today's rapidly shifting world. Welcome to The Cindy Gross Show, talk radio's premier Jewish woman activist, Cindy Gross, featuring exclusive interviews with today's top newsmakers and trendsetters. And now, Cindy Gross.
Hello, and welcome to this very special Memorial Weekend episode of The Cindy Gross Show, talk radio's premier Jewish women activist. First of all, I want to join you in thanking all of our veterans and all of our families who have made the ultimate sacrifice and lost loved ones to wars. They were defending our country, our principles, our Constitution, our amendment rights for freedom of speech, the right to bear arms, the right to vote, all the rights that we have today. We owe them a debt of gratitude today and every day. We have a huge show tonight. We are going to be featuring, in fact, a very well-known journalist who is a veteran himself and an America First candidate, because it's all about America First. But first, join me in my welcoming, my opening pearls of wisdom. I am a Jewish activist. And one thing I know about Memorial Day, regardless of political party, regardless of religious affiliation, regardless of any kind of age or gender or any kind of group one feels they belong to or how they practice their lifestyles, we all know this. We have all suffered loss from our people in the armed forces who gave up their lives for defending our country and our voices. It is no different in the Jewish community. I am proud to say that I am one of the sponsors in my local community parade. And I can't emphasize enough how proud I am that so many local Jewish activists are in my parade. It is really important, and it's a great factual learning family experience to teach about cultures and work together in a positive way, to discuss your own heritage's background in Memorial Day. How many of you look at pictures at Arlington Cemetery and you see the Star of David and you see how many Jews sacrificed their lives to defend America? That's not a new phenomenon. It goes all the way back to the American Revolution, where there were over 100 Jewish soldiers that participated in the American Revolution, and many of those lost their lives. In the Civil War, we had over 10,000 Jews fighting both for the Union and for the Confederacy. And of course, we hear the stories of Jewish soldiers together with non-Jewish soldiers walking into the concentration camps and could not believe their eyes what they saw. Every so often, a Holocaust memorial celebrates a marriage of an American Jewish soldier and a Holocaust survivor. There were more around before, maybe several decades ago, but there's still a couple around that are now married 50 years and more. It's those stories that make our country so special. It makes our heroes, the real heroes, the ones that gave their lives. Tell me what you think and share with us, veterans that listen to the show, that we should be calling out and sharing their stories. We'd love to hear it, because every day is Memorial Day when you are an American.
Nation's Finest is a nonprofit that's been dedicated to helping military veterans and their families for nearly 50 years. The COVID-19 crisis has hit homeless and low-income veterans hard. Through the VA Supportive Services for Veteran Families program, Nation's Finest can assist veterans and their families who are struggling to pay rent and other housing-related costs. To get help, visit nationsfinest.org or call 833-GOT-YOUR-6. That's 833-468-9676.
Prairie Street Prime is revolutionizing the luxury kosher experience by delivering Star Case certified, USDA Prime, high choice, and dry aged kosher beef, veal, and lamb right to your door. With culinary excellence, education, and community at the heart of our mission, we're demystifying kosher cuisine and empowering our community with innovative recipes and chef-led tutorials that build confidence and foster fun in the kitchen. Our latest offering, dry aged beef, takes luxury kosher cuisine to a whole new level. You can currently get all of our rib-based beef and briskets dry-aged, with additional products coming just in time for Passover. Each step in our process is thoughtfully curated and Star K approved to ensure your meat strictly adheres to kosher protocols. Order now at prairiestreetprime.com for delivery anywhere in the U.S. Find us on Instagram and enter our dry age sweepstakes before Monday, April 4th, 2022 for a chance to win our 4-bone USDA Prime 28-day dry aged prime rib or our USDA Prime 28-day dry aged tomahawk. Prairie Street Prime is your luxury kosher experience.
You're listening to America's premier Jewish woman activist, Cindy Gross. Welcome back, and get ready for more of Cindy's exclusive insights and analysis right here on The Cindy Gross Show.
Joining us now is Robbie Starbuck. He is a congressional candidate from Tennessee, but he's here to discuss a very special project close to his heart, a new book from Brave Books. And many of you know we've had the publisher on Brave Books on the show talking about the importance of sharing facts with children and teaching them the truth of American history, especially. Puddin' Pirates and the Problem with Power covers an important lesson, but does it through an epic adventure. In this story, you're going to learn about a dangerous mission to save the precious freedom law. In the middle of a fierce battle against silly pirates, a warrior panda, and a crazed pirate captain, your kids and you are going to learn the importance of the Constitution and the checks and balances we need in local, state, and national elections. And nobody knows it better than our next guest. Thank you so much for joining us, Robbie. And for many of my Jewish Vote GOP listeners and followers, you met Robbie last summer. And he was one of the very first to announce he was going to run in 2022. And he hasn't stopped if you see his social media. So tell us, in the middle of a campaign, why you decided to write this book.
Well, I'm a dad with 3 kids. And to be really frank, we already subscribed to Brave Books before they reached out. And so when they reached out, it was a no-brainer because my youngest, it's her favorite book series. And so it blew her mind that I was able to do this. And so it was very simple for me because culture is the battleground for our future. And if we allow our kids to be raised solely on things like Nickelodeon and Disney, we're in big trouble. And so I said, anything I can do to help support another alternative for families to, reinforce our values, I'm going to do.
And as we learned the last time we met you, you are involved in the entertainment world. So this was a natural transition for you. And because you are not a typical looking candidate or a typical candidate who has the same resume like everybody else in DC, similar to number 45, the establishment GOP would like nothing more than to challenge you. So tell us what's going on in your campaign.
Yeah, so, I've been lucky to be endorsed by Senator Rand Paul, Candace Owens, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, Marjorie Taylor Greene, a bunch of other members of Congress, and President Trump's lawyers as well, Rudy Giuliani being one of them. And, the establishment was scared because I was winning this race and I was winning it, pretty handily. And so they jumped in here and they used the bylaw that's actually written into our party specifically to get Democrats who try to sneak into elections as Republicans. So it's really something that happens only in super red states where, a Democrat will go and they'll run for some local position and they'll sign up and say they're a Republican, and it's supposed to be used to keep those people from being able to run. And it essentially says you have to have voted in 3 out of 4 of the last statewide Republican primaries in Tennessee, solely in Tennessee. So you can't carry this over from another state. So I haven't even lived here, I've lived here 3 years. There have not been enough primaries for me to fill that standard. So the secondary standard is you can be vouched for by local party officials. But the thing is, this only happens if you're challenged. You have to be officially challenged. So I was officially challenged I think end of February. And so they did this over a year into my campaign, basically. And they did this last minute because they knew what was going to happen if they didn't do it. They did a secret vote of 16 people, which, by the way, is also not how this is normally done. Normally, this is a public vote. They did not have a public hearing or a public vote. They did it all in secret because they were afraid to have their names tied to how they voted. And they kicked me off the ballot. And so now we're suing them. We already went to federal court. Next up is the state court. And we've got a few weeks left to get back on the ballot as a result of those cases. So, we've got to kind of go through the legal process. And our hope is to be put back on the ballot so that we can go fight and win this race.
Well, we're with you all the way. Jewish Vote GOP endorsed you. We're going to send out more information about the campaign and updates as well. And I really want to talk a little bit more about the book. Why pirates?
Well, the pirates are kind of a recurring theme in some of the books. There's pirates. So I will say this, though. You said it was a crazed pirate. And I will say he is crazed, but not quite as crazy as our current president, Joe Biden. But it is a good way for kids to kind of start to learn the danger of authoritarians. Okay, so in the book, this pirate, they're trying to steal what is their constitution, freedom's law. And when you're trying to steal that, you start to see, no matter how well they sell it, there's a central character in it, Puddin, who starts to see that no matter how good it sounded in the beginning, that authoritarian was always going to misuse that power, and that this wasn't the right way. Stealing the power was not the right way. Stealing freedom's law was not the right way. You had to do it the right way, and that freedom's law had, some really great things about it. And so part of that process of learning and critical thinking for kids is to get them to connect this with our own Constitution. And you see that in the end of the book where you have the brave challenges, and the brave challenges in the back get families to do games together that really result in critical thinking for kids about how the lessons from the book apply to their own life. And that's one of the things I love the most as a dad, is that, you get to be a part of it with them and do this fun game, and you get to see them come up with this themselves for why the Constitution is important, or why whatever issue it is in any of these books, why it matters. And then being able to come to that on their own is much more powerful than you just saying, this is what we believe in, and that's just it. You've got to let them have that space to think about it and to come to their conclusions on their own.
Can't think of a better Father's Day gift than giving this book. And I know we could order it online on Amazon. I know it's available in major bookstores. I'm sure it's available on your website. Where can my listeners and followers find you?
Yeah, so you can't get the book on Amazon. They do not sell on Amazon purposefully. They don't want to give money to Amazon. They are able to if they wanted to, but they don't want to. And so they're selling direct at bravebooks.com. And then if you want to support my legal effort, people can go to starbuck2022.com and donate there. That's a big help. We need to fight this specific type of action to make sure it cannot happen again, because in America, our voters need to decide our elections, not a secret group of 16 people voting, in some back room. And so any way you want to support on that end, really appreciate it. And then on social media, I'm at Robbie Starbuck on every platform.
So I do want to go into, you are bringing up children and parents. And of course, we cannot leave a congressional candidate without discussing what the Department of Justice is doing to parents, calling them domestic terrorists when they go speak up for what they believe in. And what are your thoughts about that? And what do you plan to do when you get to Washington? Because you are going to win the lawsuit and you are going to win in November. So what are you going to do to help parents and students?
Yeah, speaking as a parent, I went to these meetings. My kids are lucky, and I was able to pull them out of public school at the beginning of COVID and put them in private school. And not every parent's that lucky, and I said, you know what, they need people to show up for them. So I went to every school board meeting, at these different counties. So I went to Davidson County where they were force masking children, and also Williamson County where they were doing it. And in Williamson County, we ended up eventually getting what we needed and getting rid of it. I was at the very last school board meeting in Davidson County about 2 months ago, where they finally announced they were dropping the mask mandate. So we're pushing and pushing and pushing and fighting. And the truth is that these parents were the bravest people you could possibly want on your side. And I'm going to fight for them on every front in DC. And so a couple of the things I'm going to make a priority is, number one, doing a national version of the bill that Florida did to, stop grooming in our schools. And so our anti-grooming bill is going to be modeled very similarly to Florida's, except for we're going to extend the time range, because in Florida, it goes up to 3rd grade. We're going to go up to at least 6th and maybe 8th. To essentially say, you're not allowed to bring all this craziness into our kids' schools. You can't go have them, have a trans flag in your classroom and not an American flag. I mean, this is just un-American. And so we've got to have certain standards in terms of what is appropriate to impart on kids, and for teachers to not be able to psychologically manipulate kids into certain ideologies. And so that's one, but the other one is school choice, because one of the things we saw was that inability to get away from the system that was brainwashing kids. And so I want to deliver that power back to parents so that they get to choose where their tax dollars go. You're putting that money in for education. You should get to decide where it gets spent. And so I want to give parents that option again, so they can get away from some of these horrible, poisonous institutions, because it's also the best way to cleanse the institutions is by giving people choice, so that bad institutions don't get the money anymore, and they know they have to change something to get the money again. And so if you just break it down to a very basic economic, sort of calculus, on that front alone, once you give parents choice, you're going to start to see this stuff go away, because the institutional powers that be are going to make sure that they get the money and the funding they need. And that's only going to happen if they get in line and stop this stuff. Because the truth is, even a decent number of Democrats don't want this stuff.
Absolutely.
And so that's going to be something you realize very quickly with school choice becoming a reality. And I think it's going to be something we can gain a lot of support from independents on, that may lean them more in our direction permanently. Because the Democrats fighting against parents having a choice, I think, is not a popular thing.
I can't agree with you more. I'm also going to suggest listening to something in 2015 that Donald Trump said as candidate: diminish or eliminate the Department of Education.
Yes.
They have too much power. The teachers unions have too much power. And you know what? We didn't even discuss the exact district you're from and what areas, because Tennessee, like you said, is a red state. Probably your seat will be a Republican seat, and your state's going to stay red. So tell us exactly where in Tennessee you are.
Yeah, Tennessee's 5th district. It spans from, South Nashville all the way down to Murray County, Marshall County, Lewis County, so toward the southern side of our state. But it was redistricted in the redistricting process. So it was formerly a Democrat seat. In fact, this will be the first time it's Republican ever. And it's now a plus 12 Republican seat. So it's a pretty safe Republican seat now. And so, there's no doubt that a Republican should win this race. The question is, will justice be done enough to be back on the ballot? I believe it will. I have to believe in our justice system in America, that the right thing's going to be done, because even in the federal decision that came out on Friday, it's an opinion. The words are in it. It says Tennessee Republican Party did not follow their own rules. And on that basis alone, the state should step in and say, okay, we're going to do the right thing and put them on the ballot.
The book is Put-in Pirates and the Problem with Power, and it's a great way to teach children alliteration. Robbie Starbuck, thank you so much for joining the Cindy Gross Show. You are welcome back anytime.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.
We believe in patriotism. We believe in our nation's youth. We believe veterans earn their benefits through their service to our nation.
We believe in a strong national security. We believe in our country. For 100 years, veterans have been impacting our nation through the American Legion, and we believe it makes a difference. If you believe, learn more at legion.org/webelieve.
Kosher CBD is a kosher certified CBD company with something for everyone. We have Star K and CRC of Williamsburg certified on all of our products. CBD is derived from the hemp plant. However, there are no psychoactive effects. Why use kosher CBD products over any other brands? Quality is key. We work with a factory that has a patented formula that creates the best gum that's most enjoyable to chew. Our CBD products are all made using U.S. grown organic pure hemp. It is purely and properly extracted and lab tested to ensure we are offering the best quality. We are proud of the research we put into sourcing the highest quality products. We have 4 product lines: CBD line with both gums and mints, Immunity Pack, gums and chewable tablets, Focus, an incredible product that combines CBD, caffeine, and theanine in the trifecta effect of focus, and Pure Full Spectrum CBD oils. We have 4 strengths so everyone can reap the benefits of CBD. Visit our website at koshercbd.com and our Instagram handle, KosherCBD Official. Use code Cindy10 to receive 10% off of your entire order.
You're listening to America's premier Jewish woman activist, Cindy Gross. Welcome back, and get ready for more of Cindy's exclusive insights and analysis right here on The Cindy Gross Show.
I am so happy to have one of my good friends, a veteran, on our Memorial Day weekend special. Scott Wheeler is an American First Patriot. He is a veteran. He's an investigative journalist. And like I said, he is a great friend to me and to many people throughout the country who share in America First values. Thank you so much for joining us on this very special episode.
My pleasure, Cindy. Good to be with you.
Scott, what do you say to people today when they ask you about being a veteran?
Well, I'm usually a little flummoxed because some things I can't talk about, but some things I can. I was in the early 80s the first time, and then re-enlisted in 2004 during the War on Terror, and it was a great pleasure. When people say thank you for your service, I always respond with, I'm very pleased that I was allowed to wear the uniform.
Can you tell us some of the places you were?
Was at the Fulda Gap during the Cold War, and served in OIF in in my last tour, and it in support of the global war on terror, more specifically, and also worked in some civilian operations as well. And so counterterrorism, that is.
What does Memorial Day mean to you?
Well, it's a time to reflect on people who did not come back from the wars, and to contemplate their heroism. And I come from a long line of veterans myself. My grandfather was killed in World War II, and so to me it's one of those things that it takes some contemplation. I usually read something about an operation, about an event usually from World War II, sometimes from Vietnam, and think about the guys who we lost in those operations.
Today, there are headlines every single day about war, whether or not it's the war in Ukraine, whether or not it's the fear of war with China and Taiwan. We just heard about President Biden sending troops to Somalia. There's talk of threats from Russia to threaten NATO members. What do you tell people? There's just so much going on with war. Do you think, from what you hear and see and from the inside, that we are heading to another world war?
Well, it seems inevitable because first, war is part of the human condition. And if you go back in time, before there were nation states, there was constant state of war. People always fight. Villages, kingdoms were fighting over territory, over geography, over religion in some cases, but mostly over geography. And then in 1648, the Peace of Westphalia was signed in Westphalia, Germany, that established the first nation states. And what we've seen for the past 350 years, basically, is the same thing repeating itself, except now with nation states instead of what you would call corporation war or organizational war, village war, that kind of thing. And so it's part of the human condition. Now that you have international communications where nations can communicate, align allies, and troops' power can be projected around the globe in an instant being days or a week, then you've got, anytime there's conflict, you have people lining up. Like right now, what we're seeing in Ukraine, you have the West and NATO, many of the NATO allies lining up behind Ukraine. You have Russia searching for allies, and got an ally in China, the People's Republic of China. And so that kind of thing is what leads to global conflict. And now China seems like it is positioning itself to be in a position of control. It's spent the last 40 years with using espionage to obtain many weapons and global weapons, technology to develop advanced weapons. And they've had their designs on being a regional power in the Pacific Rim and probably beyond that. We know for sure that they've threatened, just in the past 30 years, they've threatened war against the United States multiple times, going back to when Shi Ho-chen was the defense minister in China, saying that war with the West is inevitable and China must control the initiative in that war, signaling to us that we would, it's inevitable, basically. And we saw during a conflict in the mid-90s in the Taiwan Straits, when the president of the time sent the 7th Fleet to try and send a message to China. China said, you're not willing to trade Taipei, Taiwan for LA, Los Angeles. And so there's been a lot of bellicose language for a long period of time coming out of China. How the United States reacts is kind of a mystery in some cases. Part of it is a strategy of speaking softly and carrying a big stick on the one hand. On the other hand, we've also projected weakness in the face of China, which is putting us at a disadvantage, because that's precisely what China is analyzing with regard to the United States. What are we doing? What are we likely to do? And when you see the unsuccessful pullout of Afghanistan, and our what you would say indifference towards Ukraine and Russia, throughout the Obama years, you had we were in a massive movement to appease Russia and Vladimir Putin. We gave him, the FBI rolled up a spy cell of Russian spies in the United States in 2010. And the Obama administration sent them back to Putin before we could even interrogate him. This was a sleeper cell that had been here for decades. You had we had negotiated missile positions in Poland and the Czech Republic under the Bush administration, and Putin did not want him there. The Poles and the Czechs wanted him there because it felt like it gave them strength against Putin, who had just invaded South Ossetia in Georgia. And it thought it gave them some defense and some protection because the United States had an interest in defending their countries because we had missile sites there.
Okay,
And then
so I want to break into this. You're giving us
Sure.
so much great information, and so you're naming things that are going back 2 decades. And people think this happened overnight, the same way they see the hate now, the spurt out of the Democratic Party. Nothing happens overnight, and that's a very important point to make this Memorial Day. I mean, if you don't want to have to celebrate more soldiers dying and commemorating them on Memorial Day, then people have to be aware and get active now. We can't wait 2 decades to find out more information. I always say something, and when I said it 5 years ago, people called me a kook. I always said, when we were talking about the original Iran nuclear deal, that we are pre-Holocaust times. And I feel it now more than ever. We also see a trend right now with veterans. For a while, we did not see veterans going into public office. We didn't see them. I mean, we were always talking Obama never served in any kind of military service. Trump didn't. We're seeing now a lot of people in the military retiring and going into public service. There's a record number of Congress people, especially on the right, from all backgrounds. Can you tell us why this is happening?
You mean why
so many people from the military are now going back into public service, when for a while we did not have that?
Well, part of it is the global war on terror has you had a lot of patriotic Americans who are committed to public service, diverting their careers to go back, to go into the military or return to the military. And so you have a lot more veterans, and now they're looking at what their country, what they fought for, and they see a lot of it is not what they had hoped for. I've said many times to other veterans, we fought around the world to defend freedom in other places, only to come home and see the kind of thing we were fighting against taking over here in our own country, taking root. And that's, I think, what has inspired a lot of them, and to get back into public service and run for office. And it's unfortunate, you look, for the most part throughout the 20th century, every president almost, save for FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, and Bill Clinton, all served, I believe. I believe every one of them served, maybe Coolidge, I'm not sure if he did or not, but then you look, and even George W. Bush was in the National Guard and a fighter pilot. Then you get Obama, who never served, and you had Clinton, who never served. Clinton and FDR were the only 2 presidents in the 20th century. What had happened was the Cold War ended, and people felt confident about voting for someone like Clinton, who had dodged the draft. We know for sure now, despite the denials at the time, we know he dodged the draft. And we had people felt it was okay to vote for someone who had never served, someone who hadn't been tested. And it ended up revealing America's weakness. We had 8 years of Clinton decontrolling strategic weapons technology to China, while they were pouring illegal donations into his political coffers. And that strengthened China. It strengthened their advanced their will. They now have dangerous weapons that they can threaten the world with, that they did not have those. They have defensive measures to defeat, countermeasures that can defeat our modern technology based on what they were able to steal, or what the Clinton administration decontrolled for them. And so that's what happens when someone who has not actually been tested, who's not been put in a position to have to subordinate their own personal interests for the interest of a greater good. You get the mindset of a Clinton or an Obama, very self-serving, to me, it was amazing at the time in the 90s. I thought you had, in both the 92 and the 96 election, you had a guy who had dodged the draft against two guys, a guy who had signed up at the youngest possible age, 17, to fight in World War II. And the same with Dolan and H.W. Bush in 92. Here's a guy who manipulated the system to avoid serving, who actually got more votes than the guy who at the youngest possible age signed up to serve at a time of war. And the same in 96. And so how could we expect Bill Clinton to do anything except what he had done his whole life, and that's take care of himself first.
And now she wants to run again for president.
Oh, I think that's a spoof. I think she's bluffing because she's trying to stay relevant. Maybe she's trying to make some more money. She has about as much chance in this Democrat Party of getting the nomination as Mickey Mouse. She is way out of her league now. It's the party is extreme. She couldn't run as the fake moderate that she was. I think it's more about maybe intimidating Biden to have his Justice Department sit down on this on the Durham investigation. Possibly. I mean, this is highly speculative on my part, but maybe that's what it is. She's sending a message that if that investigation gets too close, then she might have to run for president, and that which wouldn't work for her, and she knows it wouldn't work, but it would weaken Biden's chances of being reelected.
So you brought up a question I was just about to ask you. You are an award-winning investigative journalist. What are some of the big stories that you are working on, or what are the topics that most interest the country right now?
Well, I think right now it's the economy mostly, and so I've been watching that and the political climate. I've been in this Durham investigation. I began back in 2016, before there was a special prosecutor on it, and I over the years wrote quite a bit about it, including what a lot of people don't know about the FBI investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails was that the FBI, and this is according to Lisa Page's testimony to the House, to a House committee. She said that the FBI wanted to charge Hillary Clinton with the Espionage Act, under the Espionage Act, because of keeping classified information on her private email server. And it was an attorney for the U.S. Justice Department who was in charge of the investigation who said no. That attorney's name is Richard Scott. And before he went to work for the Justice Department, he was an attorney at David Kendall's law firm. David Kendall, of course, was Hillary Clinton's defense attorney in the email investigation. And I'm the only journalist to ever report that.
And we've got to get that out again, but I personally feel that the Durham report is too little, too late. The same thing with, and I'm friends with Miranda Devine, Laptop from Hell. While we're all struggling to get food, we're all struggling to get gas in our cars, the Bidens, the Pelosi's, everybody else in that circle is still making millions and they don't have to worry about feeding their families. They don't have to worry about taking subways and feeling like they're fearing for their lives and getting stabbed. I mean, this has become an everyday kind of situation in New York. Broad daylight. They don't have to fear their children's baby formulas not being available. So as much as we say there's so much there and people know the facts, our system is totally corrupt and broken.
Broken for sure, and yes, corrupt as well. And we just have not paid enough attention as citizens to during good times we allowed people like Bill Clinton to do the kinds of things that we would never tolerate during a time of war. And same with Obama. We felt good about ourselves because we elected the first Black president. And so we were willing to look the other way, thinking that at some point, race relations are going to heal. But in fact, the exact
It's
opposite.
worse. Anti-Semitism is up, Asian hate is up, gender hate is up, so it doesn't matter. A listener wants to know, would you encourage your children to go into the military?
I have 4 sons, and two of them I recommended that they consider military service, and they did. Actually, all 4 of them have considered it. 2 of them I suggested it, and they are all very patriotic, and I think probably a couple of them will at some point be part of the military.
Also, a question. During the Trump administration, Trump made a point of trying to work with the veterans as far as getting better services in military hospitals, better services for any of their needs as a thank you for their service. And we don't hear anything about that now. And we're just wondering, how do the servicemen feel about what's going on and where their thoughts are in 2022 elections?
I think many of them are sort of depressed. Without going into a lot of detail, I would say that in some places the veterans medical care is good, in some places it's deplorable, and veterans are not being seen. There's Trump instituted rules and during his term about how long, if a veteran makes an appointment, he has to be seen within 7 days of asking for the appointment. And that's being ignored now. And in some cases, it's causing problems. I hear from some people who are in the active duty military and the medical corps who have said that they are so sick and tired of having to divert resources to train and prepare for transgenders in the military, while when resources are needed to treat men and women who have been injured on active duty, who need medical treatment, but they spend time and resources training to integrate transgenders into the military. I think it's very strange, bizarre that we would even consider such a thing at this time.
Any last thoughts before we close?
Well, congratulations on the show, and wow, you're perfect for this.
Thank you. And we're expanding next month, so thank you.
Well, it's my pleasure, and again, congratulations, and
any word to fellow veterans like yourself on this Memorial Weekend show, and to their families, and to the families of those who actually lost the military family members in their lives?
I would say those of us who made it think a lot about the families who lost loved ones. I know I do, and I think other veterans do as well.
Where can our audience reach out to you?
Well, on Twitter, it's @Cap Media Group on Twitter. That's probably the best way. You can DM me if you want, and that's probably the best way to reach me in a public sense.
Scott, I can't thank you enough. This is Scott Wheeler, investigative journalist, a veteran, and most importantly, my friend. Thank you for joining us on this very special weekend as we commemorate American veterans and American soldiers, armed forces, military people who gave of their lives for our freedoms. Thank you so much for joining the Cindy Gross Show.
I enlisted as a medic to be there to help my patients, and after an injury, I found myself as a patient. I experienced post-traumatic seizures. Depression is a big one that comes along with it, PTSD. So I pursued my PhD in neuroscience and regenerative medicine. The coalition has helped fund my academic pursuits. They genuinely care about helping the vet in whatever way that they can. Through supporting the coalition, you're supporting some of the veterans that have the biggest needs.
Visit saluteheroes.org to learn more.
Nike is constantly political. Why? Cover. Congressional reports suspect Nike used forced labor in China. Religious minorities were ripped from their families, sterilized, sold to factories. Nike made shoes in those same areas. Congress tried to ban Nike's labor practices. Nike fought back with highly paid lobbyists. Rather than hiring Americans, Nike chose China. John Donahoe, Nike. Stop exploiting foreign labor. Serve your customers, not woke politicians.
And just like that, the time flew by. Before I leave, I want to again thank all of those in the military for their service. And I want to thank the families of those who are mourning today, their fathers, their brothers, grandfathers, and loved ones, neighbors and friends. Because of those people who gave their lives in our time of need, serving in the military, we have the freedom to have the Cindy Gross Show. And thanks to you, I have a huge announcement. Many of you, brand new listeners over the past couple of months, have been writing and calling the studios and asking more about me. One of the things we realized is that there is no other Jewish woman activist, religious, on the right, or even on the left speaking out, because I will have people on the left on the show to have intelligent discussion. So starting in June, we are expanding with a brand new name, the Jewess Patriot, featuring Cindy Gross, Talk Radio's first Jewish woman activist. And we are going on more stations. And we are also going to be streaming through video stations and televised twice a week. So stay tuned. We have a big show for the first show in June. We have two huge guests. I'm going to drop through on social media little hints about who they are. Both national figures, familiar faces. On this Memorial Day, remember, share the facts of American history, especially honoring those who died for your freedoms. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for joining today's Cindy Gross Show, America's premier Jewish woman activist. Be sure to download Cindy's next show, as well as previous ones, available internationally on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and in Israel on Jewish podcasts. See you next time on The Cindy Gross Show.